Welcome to this Open University video tutorial designed to supplement the module T189 Digital Photography. In this tutorial, I want to look at an issue that we see when taking pictures of structures from a low viewpoint. Unless you have an expensive shift and tilt lens, taking pictures like this will often give you problems with converging verticals. This is where the vertical lines are not straight, but diagonally converge on each other towards the top of the frame. This issue is also known as perspective distortion because it relates to your perspective of your position when taking the photo. In some images, this effect can work to give a sense of size or distance, but other times you may like to have the structure look straight. In professional architectural photography, for an example, it is desirable to have things represented accurately with correct vertical and horizontal lines. Fortunately, Lightroom offers us a very simple tool to correct these kind of issues. If we enter development mode, choose lens correction and manual, we have some tools to help correct convergence. Each of these sliders has a different effect on the image. You can experiment with these to see what effect they have. I want to use the vertical slider for this image, which corrects vertical convergence. As I move my mouse over the vertical slider, you can see a grid appears over the image, and as I adjust the slider left or right, you can see the effect it has. As you can see, it takes a high negative number to correct this particular image. This is because I was very close and low down relative to the structure. This is an example of where I was standing when I took the shot. My perspective has made the convergence worse, so more editing is required. Once I straighten the image, you can see we get some grey areas down here. This is because Lightroom has effectively stretched the top of the image and made it wider to reduce the convergence. This means the lower half is now relatively smaller than the top half. To get round this, I will need to crop the image to remove the grey areas. I can do that with the crop tool, or simply click on the constrain crop box to do an automatic crop to the original ratio that the image was taken in. You can see I have now lost the top of the building. If I use the scale slider, I can retrieve some of the lost parts of the image, but I've now sacrificed the lower parts of the screen. The vertical lines in this image are now correct. You can see from the original that I composed it with some space around the structure. As you've seen, when you straighten images, you have to sacrifice parts of the scene, and if you use a very tight composition, you may not be able to scale back the image to retain the detail you want. As an example, if you look at this version, there is not much space around the structure, especially near the top. When I scale back 50%, I only manage to keep the top of the building in. So remember to leave plenty of cropping space around images like this if you need to use the correction tools. One last point is to consider your position when photographing the scene. Do you need to be so close or so low? Can you find a better position for which to reduce the perspective issues? If you look at this image taken up close to the structure, by taking a few steps back you can reduce this issue like this. There is still some convergence issues here on the side, but it needs less adjustments to fix it. You'll notice the correction here is -21, whereas we used -100 when we stood closer. In this example, you can see that the camera is more parallel to the vertical lines than in the previous example here. If we look at this last image, I actually stood on the steps of the building opposite, so my view was more direct than when I was looking up. For this example, you can see the camera was almost completely parallel to the vertical lines, which has reduced the convergence even further. You can see this edge is not quite straight, but it only needs a small adjustment of -7 to correct this, and we've been able to retain a lot more of the scene. So that's also something to think about when taking images of structures. Try stepping back or finding a better vantage point. Keeping your camera parallel with straight lines will help reduce perspective distortion and convergence issues. So in this tutorial, we've seen that Lightroom has some useful tools for correcting convergence of lines in an image. We've only looked at the vertical corrections, but you can use the other sliders to adjust horizontal convergence. Before you take a photo, think about what effect you want to achieve. If you want to increase the feeling of size and height, try getting closer and lower down. If you want a more accurate representation of things with straight lines, try getting further away or higher up, so your camera is parallel with the lines in the scene. You can also use the correction tools demonstrated in this tutorial to fine-tune things when you need to.
Get more from the Open University. Check out the links on screen now.